1,000 years ago, over 100,000 man-made earthen mounds graced the North American landscape east of the Mississippi River, and some to the west. Some were conical, peaked burial mounds. Others flat-topped, designed to support pole buildings, while others had been formed as effigy mounds in the shape of animals, both common and extinct. Many smaller mounds had been placed carefully, oriented so as to determine the timing of celestial events, like many prehistoric megalithic structures worldwide. Most of the mound sites had been places of habitation, often located near a river, but a few large earthworks seem to have been dedicated ceremonial centers like Poverty Point in Louisiana. We do not know what the people living there called their cities, towns, and villages, but they were certainly the ancestors of the present-day Native Americans. Linguists claim there were 600 languages in the Americas, many from 5 to 7 language groups, and others completely unrelated. Archaeologists have divided ancient America into different time periods, but more importantly for our study, different cultural periods. The dates they present do vary depending on which university one is using for a reference. The Adena culture built mounds for 1,000 years, from 1000 BC to 0. The Hopewell culture built mounds for 700 years, from 200 BC to 500 CE. That was followed by a 500-year lull in mound building. Then, the Mississippian cultures built mounds for 300 years from 1000 CE to 1300 CE. No one knows how old some of the stone structures found in North America are. But they claim the building of earthen mounds began with the Adena culture in roughly 1000 BC. That date could be considered questionable because of earlier sites. The Lower Jackson Mound near Poverty Point in Louisiana dates back thousands of years earlier. One way or another, the Adena culture flourished until about year 0 and produced some very interesting artifacts that I will be showcasing in a special video. Many Adena sites were clustered in Ohio. In the same area were many Hopewell sites. Hopewell culture began all over the East prior to the dissolution of the Adena peoples, so they must have lived near one another for 100 or 200 years or so and shared cultures. They did both build mounds. They did both smoke pipes and more. The Hopewell culture flourished and built mounds for 700 years until 500 AD. What followed was a dramatic decline in population for 500 years across North America. That was followed by a worldwide warming period, during which time Native Americans began to cultivate maize. Finally, mound building began again in 1000 CE. Eventually, Cahokia, Illinois boasted a population of over 20,000 people during what the archaeologists call the Mississippian period, which flourished for 300 years. The reason for the demise of the Mississippian period remains a mystery, one that has fomented plenty of speculation. In Moundville, Alabama, and Cahokia, people began to leave in about 1300 and had completely abandoned the sites as habitations by 1400. In fact, all of the mound sites, thousands of them, were abandoned at that same time. Further, it seems The larger places of habitation were abandoned all across North America during that period as well. We shall be delving into this mystery in another special video. I'm Mark Stanley. What got me interested in all of this was when I began to study for a manuscript for a fiction book titled Spirit Arrow. My Native American story takes place in Arkansas and Louisiana in the 17th century, about 100 years before European settlers arrived on the scene. What captured my attention when I studied for the first time was this piece of art, this artifact. Staring at the photograph of it on the screen, I found myself declaring, I'm going to draw that. Prior to that moment, I had no notion of drawing anything. That drawing led to the creation of 37 more renderings of artifacts I was attracted to. Shell, stone, copper gorget, tobacco pipes, pottery, and statuettes. I used the drawings to illustrate the chapter pages in the book. However, the first time I tried it, I traced and reproduced it accurately like an archaeological drawing, but it didn't look good. When one is looking at the shell artifact, somehow the eye ignores the imperfections, but in black and white it didn't work. Now, don't flee, this is not an art class, but I must explain how I rendered these designs so cleanly. With my time machine, I brought the original artist forward in time, escorted him into my shop where I was using the workbench as a drawing table with the shop lights, pencils, papers, erasers, straight edges, rulers, etc. And I asked him, I really like this design. Could you do it again here, please? So with modern tools, he did it. So I realized that on paper, the symmetrical designs needed to be expressed symmetrically. The non-symmetrical designs I reproduced accurately. What I did not engage in was artistic expression, except for the cover art, which I gleaned off of this copper piece from Spiro, Oklahoma, and the Calusa cat, which was kind of a mistake, but it worked out because it represents the main female character in the story. I'll do a video on that. Some of the artifacts were in such poor condition that it was difficult to discern all of the elements, especially on the edges where they were broken or scuffed up. So if I could see one clean element or the best one, I reproduced it all the way around. That is how I extracted these designs out of the artifacts. I have no idea what any of these things mean. And I resist speculating. I prefer data over speculation. I'm going to make an effort in this series not to harangue the archaeological community too much, but I must say there is far too much speculation that goes on there for my tastes. That said, concerning the meaning of these artifacts, I think we as a group would welcome any traditional knowledge that originates from native folks' oral traditions in the comments section. In this series, we will be looking at the artifacts, where they originated from, and anything we can find out about them, highlighting the culture and the beauty of these people that lived in North America long ago. That said, here is a drawing of this artifact from Moundville, Alabama. Let's go there. Most of the excavations at Moundville, Alabama were performed in the 20th century. With the museum now, it's one of the most visited mound sites in the country, second only to Cahokia in Illinois. At its zenith, in 1200 AD, 39 mounds were enclosed by a wooden palisade, inside of which perhaps 1,000 people lived, with over 10,000 more people living in the surrounding areas. Archaeologists claim that this was a class stratified culture based on the middens and the burial sites. From the remains, they could determine their status by what they ate and what they were buried with. The people on the hill ate the best cuts of meat and fish. Those close in ate fairly well too, and the folks on the periphery the lesser cuts. Even though people began to abandon the area around 1300, they did continue to use it as a burial site for another 100 years or so. The artifact is a shell gorget. We will look at many other shell and stone gorgets throughout this series, so I will say right now that this typicity is one that links the Adena, Hopewell, and Mississippian cultures together. They all use gorgets. Some decorated, others plain, polished shell, stone, or copper. Another shared typicity is their use of tobacco and pipes. But the most obvious clues to the idea that we're looking back at one loosely related overall culture is the undeniable fact that they all built mounds. I saw it the first time I perused these artifacts. I was looking at them all fresh, like with the eyes of a child. The art suggests it's all from one general culture. If the Hopewell peoples ceased to build mounds in 500 CE, and eventually the Mississippian cultures began to build them again in 1000 CE, then that's 500 years that passed with no one doing it. We are talking about a culture that had no written language, and yet they all had in their oral history a tradition of digging and hauling thousands of tons of metric tons of dirt and piling it up. All right, let's look at the artifact. The hand and the eye theme is very interesting. One I will cover in another video. Here's a spoiler. It's a worldwide symbol. Then there is the spiral column in the middle with those two angry guys. And the element on the right under the hands. How about the one on the left? Let's look at that closer. What is that thing? That must have been some pretty strong tobacco they were smoking. I am looking for other examples of this unusual style. Here's some other artifacts from this site. The horned serpent. Another horned serpent. This gorgeous cup has to have been made by a woman. No? Chickasaw. I understand y'all lay claims to this site, and Choctaw and others. If any of you folks know what this means, perhaps you can tell us in the comment section. I do understand the necessity and wisdom of sacred secret. The two words share a root. But if you want to enlighten us, that would be great. In my next video, we shall visit Spiro, Oklahoma, what has been deemed the King's Tut's tombs of mound builder sites. So, bonsoir, mon ami. Y'all have a wonderful evening.